guys know, I'm Christy Klaus, the Family Support Coordinator at the Down Syndrome Association. And tonight we have a workshop on behavior. I will let you guys all know that's on here because I always feel like it's just good to hear. We get lots and lots of questions on behavior. Not uncommon. So I never want anyone to feel like they're alone if they're dealing with behaviors and they're just trying to figure out what might work for their child. I know we've had some of that experience personally. So we are always looking to provide some good resources for families and answer questions and help them figure out, what might be going on, send them in a direction, share additional resources, things like that. I'm going to introduce Mel in just a second, but one more kind of general thing. So when we do have families call the office and they want to brainstorm through some behavior challenges they're experiencing with their child, one of the things that we'll always start with is to make sure that everything is going okay physically for their loved one with Down syndrome, whether it's a student or their child. I know it might be less common that teachers might know what's going on, but the healthcare guidelines for children and adults were both updated not too long ago. The adult one more recently. So whenever we have discussions on behavior, we always kind of want to check in to make sure that the person's up to date on their blood work, like their hypothyroidism, celiac, things like that, things that can cause pain, which can affect behaviors. So things like that, like celiac, hypothyroidism, things like that can happen at any time. It's not just something like, that was maybe done at childhood and wasn't checked again. Thyroid levels can change. So even if your child or adult is on thyroid medicine, it could be that it needs to be changed, and that can have impacts to behavior. So I can include the healthcare guidelines in what I'm going to send out. So really the message is that pain and different things can also impact behavior. So that's also just something to check into or be aware of when you're trying to figure out behavior challenges. So I'm sure Mel can add to that, but I'll let her introduce herself and go ahead and get started on our behavior basics.
Thank you, Christy. My name is Melanie Hammel, and I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I apologize, my voice is a little bit scratchy. But basically, I have worked with kiddos on the autism spectrum, kiddos with Down syndrome, and I've worked with kiddos ranging from kindergarten into their adulthood. So I have a pretty wide variety of experience working with individuals with different behavioral challenges. And that's just the biggest part of my job every day. I currently work at a private autism clinic for early intervention. So we work on a lot of those prerequisite skills, and a lot of those are behavioral. And behavioral is, it's communication. So today I have a presentation, and it's a two-part presentation over all of the functions of behavior, because that's like our foundational why. That's where we start off with always, of kind of figuring out why an individual is engaging in behaviors. And then when we determine those functions of behavior, then we know exactly how to approach that behavior, and how to tackle it to decrease those negative behaviors and how to replace them with appropriate ones. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kind of give you a little bit of an agenda of what you guys can expect for our presentation this week and next week. So like I said, I'm a board certified behavior analyst. Oh, hold on. Sorry. And this is kind of like my goal for the presentation. I want to work on preventing those problem behaviors from occurring, how to react when the problem behaviors occur, and how we teach those replacement behaviors. So part one, which will be tonight, we'll go over the 4 functions of behaviors. And since there's 4, I broke them down into 2 this week and 2 for next week. So we'll do escape maintain behaviors and attention seeking behaviors. And I'll go into really great detail about those. And then if your kiddo or your student engages in any of those, I can answer any questions that you guys have. You can bring me certain situations and scenarios that you're dealing with, and I can troubleshoot and walk you through my suggestions on how to work through those behaviors. And then next week, what we'll work on is access to tangible behaviors and automatic behaviors. And then we'll do a little bit of practicing. So I have a couple like role-playing scenarios, and it kind of tests you on how you're able to apply this knowledge in like a real life situation, and then be able to practice, determining those functions. What would we do? How should we react? How should we prevent it? So that you guys can leave these workshops with feeling like, okay, I have this skill and I can apply it right away. Okay, so the 4 functions of behavior in applied behavioral analysis is escape, access, attention, and automatic. That's going to be the foundation. There's really nothing outside of that. Any behavior we see is going to fit into one of these 4 categories. And like I said, we figure out that function and then we come up with a plan on how to tackle that behavior. And this is exactly what I mean, like, why do we need to know the function? So if we don't know the function of behavior, we're just kind of guessing why they're engaging in the behavior, right? So if you have a kiddo who's aggressive or running away and you're just kind of guessing, you might be responding in a way that's not providing the same functional response. And if you're not providing that same functional response, you're not going to decrease that maladaptive behavior. So it's how we prevent those behaviors, how we respond, and how we reinforce those appropriate behaviors. Because we want them to engage in appropriate behaviors, and we want to reinforce when they're engaging in those appropriate behaviors.
Like I said.
So the first behavior we're going to go over is escape, maintain behavior. And everybody engages in some kind of escape, maintain behavior. So that's escaping or avoiding a non-preferred activity, person, interaction. I engage in escape, maintain behaviors. You engage in it. Your kids engage in it. Your students engage in it. We all engage in it. It just looks different. So the way that I might engage in escape, maintain behavior is my pile of laundry might stack up to the roof and I'm avoiding doing my laundry. But maybe your kiddo is avoiding eating their vegetables at dinner and they're hiding under the table. They both serve the same function, but they look very different. So a lot of the common behaviors we see, and this isn't an end all be all, this is just kind of like the typical behaviors that I have seen in my experience when a kiddo is trying to, or an adult is trying to get out of something non-preferred or get away from someone that they don't want to interact with. Maybe mom is a little bit more flexible on eating vegetables and dad maybe follows through a little bit better. So you might see an increase in some of these behaviors with that parent that follows through a little bit more with that expectation. So you might see some property destruction, maybe flipping furniture or ripping up their math homework at night, hiding in the bathroom or underneath their bed, eloping. So this doesn't always have to look like them running away. It can, they're kind of wiggling out of their dinner chair, they're leaving the area, they're refusing to go into an area. They're engaging in some aggression, so hitting, kicking, biting. They're yelling or maybe covering their ears, hiding, or in some more intense cases, we can see self-injury. So a lot of those times we can see not just one, but a combination of some of these behaviors when a kiddo is or an adult is trying to get out of that non-preferred task. So this is my favorite part. This is how we always respond, right? A lot of the times we think this is a lesson. This is a time for me to teach them a learning opportunity. And this is how I'm going to respond, right? So removing the work or the expectation. So maybe it's homework time or chore time. And you are being like, okay, never mind. I'm just going to remove it. And they don't have to do it anymore. They don't have to do their laundry, or they don't have to finish their work, or they don't have to clean up their toys. Or you get down there and you help them. You say, okay, I'll do 5 of your math problems and you only have to do 1. Or, okay, I'll do your laundry this time, but you have to do it the next time. Again, reducing the amount of work, talking to the child. So again, as human beings, you want to be able to make it into a learning opportunity, and that comes in the form of talking to the person, trying to talk through it with them, getting a little bit more of that rapport and like, okay, I know doing the laundry really stinks, or I know you don't want to do, your math homework, or reprimanding or bribery or negotiating, soothing, giving attention. Any of those things is a very common way for us to respond because we're all human and we're just doing what we think is the best response. And you may be inadvertently reinforcing that behavior. And I mean that by, if you're removing the work and maybe they had a 45-minute escape tantrum, they know, okay, I just have to avoid this for 45 minutes and mom's going to let me out of my chores, or mom's not going to make me eat my vegetables. Or if you get down to talking and you start having a conversation, now you've created this huge gap between the expectation that you've placed and the follow through with that demand, because you have this huge middle section of you talking to them, and now they're like, I'll talk to mom all night long because now I don't have to do my laundry. Or bribing, they're going to know like, oh, when mom tells me that I have to do my homework or my laundry or clean up my toys, I get a piece of candy. So I'll always know that I'm only going to do it if I get a piece of candy. So you're inadvertently reinforcing this behavior, which means if you're reinforcing that negative behavior, which is any of those ones I previously listed, that increased the likelihood that the next time you ask them to do that task, they're going to engage in all of those behaviors. So it's really important the way that we respond to a behavior. If the way that we respond to a behavior makes or breaks the likelihood that it occurs again in the future. So this is my suggestions for how to prevent it. So not only do we need to respond a certain way, but we need to get ahead of that behavior and put some strategies in place before the behavior occurs. So what I would suggest is, prompting the student or your child to ask for help or a break prior to presenting that expectation. So if you know, okay, after work or school, they come home and they do their homework and they have a snack, and the whole routine, and when you're going to ask them to do that highly non-preferred activity, go ahead and offer some strategies when you present it. Hey, I know we're going to have to do our laundry at 6:30 tonight. I can help you with that. You just have to ask. Or, okay, we're going to do our homework at 4:30 when we get home from school. If you need help or if you need a break when you are doing your homework, you can let me know. You can also do some visuals with this. You can have like a break card or a help card readily at, the kitchen table when you're doing their homework. Same thing with any household chores. If you know that your kiddo is going to do 3 chores, you can say, hey, do you want to do 1 chore and then take a break? Or do you want to do 2 chores and then take a break? Or do 3 chores and take a break? So you're automatically giving them that tool to ask for help or a break before the behavior occurs. And then praising and reinforcing that appropriate work with a lot of verbal praise. This is very individualized to your individual that you're working with, whether it's your student or your child. You are going to know what they're motivated by. If verbal praise is not motivating for them, you don't have to use verbal praise. If a token board works for them, or a high five, or sometimes kids just want to be ignored and don't necessarily want that praise. Meet your child or adult where they are. So I'm not saying always reinforce them with this set item or activity or praise. Reinforce them with what is reinforcing to them. And then giving choices within the means of the expectation. So I kind of already touched on that briefly. So if you are going to give your child kind of a larger task, say it's homework, do you want to do number 1 first, or number 4 first, or number 7 first? So within the means of the expectations means you aren't allowing them to escape the expectation, but within the expectation, you're giving them a little bit of a say. So, or with chores, or with work expectations, you can give them choices that are still meeting that expectation. But it kind of gives them a little bit of control, and then that increases the likelihood that they're going to engage in that non-preferred activity. Scheduled breaks. This could be, important if you have a child who has a job. You could work with their job and their company on, hey, I think that they need a scheduled break at this time and at this time to help them stay on task and not engage in those escape maintain behaviors. And then my final suggestion would be using a lot of visuals. So using a first then chart, I have used this a lot with younger kiddos, and it shows in the first section what their expectation is, and then in the then section, it's that reinforcement. If that is maybe a little bit too young for your child, like if you have an adult child who you need something a little bit more visual to help them keep on track, you can use like a reward system. Token boards are great, just to show what they're working towards and that they're making progress. Visuals are huge so that they know I'm working towards getting out of this activity, which I'm not wanting to do, and also knowing that reinforcement is available. So visuals are key. I know the Down Syndrome Association has a surplus of visuals that Christy could probably talk to you guys about. I know that they have a lot more knowledge on and more access to visuals. So I could always supply them, or we can talk to Christy about if there were any specific ones that you felt were a good fit for your child. Okay, so we talked about how we kind of prevent the behaviors from happening. Those antecedent strategies is what we like to call them in ABA. Antecedent is before the behavior occurs. So getting ahead of the behavior, putting those strategies in place. We talked about how we typically respond when a behavior occurs, but that's not how we're going to respond. What we're going to do is these suggestions when the behavior occurs. And before I go into more details about this, it's really important that when you start to use these strategies and when you start to respond a certain way, that you stick with it. If you start one way and you're like, this is too much for me right now, which I completely understand, it is kind of a lot. You have to be really ready to follow through with whatever expectation you're putting in place. So make sure that you and your family, or you within the classroom, you're ready to really tackle these behaviors 100%. And I mean that because if you respond one way one time and then a different way the next time, you have created a very, very difficult schedule of reinforcement to break. And the best way I can kind of explain this reinforcement schedule, it's called a variable ratio. So it basically just means you reinforce sometimes, you don't reinforce sometimes, and your kiddo has no idea when that reinforcement is coming. And so for this behavior in particular, if it's escape maintain behavior, they're not going to know when they're going to be able to escape that non-preferred activity or person or task. But they're going to keep trying because you have them on this very variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. So they're going to keep trying until you let them out of it, because you did let them out of it maybe 3 times prior. In an adult perspective, the way that I describe this as gambling at a slot machine. So you go up to a slot machine and you put in your money and you go, and sometimes you win money, and then maybe the next 5 times you don't, and then maybe on the 7th time you win again. You don't know when that reinforcement is coming, but you keep trying until you win again, essentially. And that's that kind of schedule of reinforcement. So they're going to try, and it is the most difficult schedule of reinforcement to break because it is so highly reinforcing, because it's worth it to just keep trying, hit that slot machine one more time. Maybe you'll win. Maybe you'll win the next 3 times. Same thing with your kiddo. Maybe if I run out of my room 3 more times, mom will let me get out of my math homework. So it's the same premise. So if you are going to start doing these response strategies, you have to do it with 100% consistency every single time. And we can always talk more about that if you guys have questions, but I'll go over how I would respond if a client of mine was engaging in any of those escape maintain behaviors. So reminders of the expectation and the reinforcement that is available that they're working for, but in very short, specific phrases. So if you go up to your kiddo and you say, okay, Sally, if you go and you do your dishes and you put your laundry in the washer machine, and then you clean up your room, then you can have a piece of candy, and then you can watch your show, and then mommy will be so happy. Sally didn't hear anything that you just said except for all of the demands that you just put in place. So now Sally's like, oh, there's no way I'm going to do any of that. that you just asked me to do. I'm just going to go ahead and hide back in my room. So if you use very short, specific phrases that show, okay, I have this one expectation and then I get rewarded. And it may not be a tangible item or activity that your child is wanting. It might just be that you leave them alone, or that they're all done with their chores, or they get to sit in their room and listen to their music. So if you have a young client or a child, I would say, okay, first we're going to do our work, then you get to play on the playground. Maybe if I had a middle school aged client and they wanted to just play on their phone, and their expectation was to do their chores. Okay, first do your chore chart, then you get to play on your phone. Or if you have an adult client or an adult child, same thing. Whatever's motivating to them, maybe it's being left in their room, maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's going up to the gas station and getting a soda, but you want them to do their laundry. Okay, first complete your laundry, then we can go to the gas station. So it's very specific, and you're not budging on any of your expectations at that time. And that first then statement is going to be the only statement you're saying to your child at that time. Again, remember, we're going back to what we typically respond, and we're getting rid of those. We're not going to get on their level and start talking to them about, like, I know you're sad that you don't want to do your work, or you don't want to do your chores. I'm sorry that you're sad. First, let's do our work and then we can be all done. Now you have, again, created this huge interim between that expectation and that follow through, and they're earning that escape from that non-preferred task. So by keeping those short, specific phrases, you're getting straight to the point and you're following through. After they have completed your, that expectation or whatever that demand is that you've put in place, you can talk to them, you can throw them a party, you can do all of the things once that expectation is met. My next suggestion would be reduce the talking to your student or your child when they are not following the direction. So I'm not saying you're going to use all these phrases and tomorrow morning they're going to listen and it's going to work beautifully. It is going to take some time for them to learn, because you're breaking a lot of those old reinforced behaviors. So something that I like to promote is limit your interaction with them, because you might have your child have a dual function, and we have that in ABA where they have two functions for the same behavior. So I see a lot of the time, a lot of the kids that I work with, they will have a dual function of escape and attention. So while they're running around or hiding under the table, or getting out of that non-preferred activity, they're also getting a lot of attention from you, because you're prompting them and you're talking to them and you're following them around the house, and you're maybe taking their toys away from them, and they're getting a lot of attention from that. So if you can limit your attention as much as possible and stick to those first then phrases, you've now eliminated the attention that you are providing when the behaviors are occurring, and you're following through with that expectation. And they're going to know that after a couple of times of you respond in the same way, they're going to know, okay, mom and dad aren't kidding. I have to go and do my laundry now. It's going to be so much easier if I just listen to them, and then I get to hang out with them. So that would be really important to kind of tie all of these things together. And then the next big one is don't allow access to any preferred items until the original expectation has been met. So say, your kiddo is wanting their cell phone, but the TV is also really motivating for them, or the snack cabinet, or listening to the radio, or whatever it is. You can use those as part of that reinforcement schedule as that then statement in the first then statement. So say, like, okay, you've taken the phone, but they keep wandering over to the snack cabinet. You're going to say, oh, first do your laundry and then you can have a snack. And then maybe they wander over to the TV and try to turn it on. Oh, first we're going to do your laundry, then you can watch the TV. So you can kind of manipulate your then statement with that reinforcement as they're showing interest to things. Basically, the way I describe it is you could have Disney World once you've complied with what I've asked of you, but you don't get anything until that original expectation has been met. Next one is don't make the work easier or remove the work by any means. So again, if you put in the expectation the first time you said it, as you have 3 chores to do, or you have 7 math problems, or you have 4 pieces of vegetables to eat, You are not going to be changing that original demand, because now maybe, okay, you can have 2 pieces of your vegetables, or you can only do 1 load of laundry, or we'll only do 4 math problems tonight. You've now reinforced all of that escape maintain behavior, even though they complied with part of the task. They didn't comply with the full task that you asked of them. So in return, they kind of won. They won that they got out of part of that work. And the next time that you ask them, okay, maybe last time we did 4 problems, but tonight we're going to do 7. They're going to be like, well, I tore up the house, I spit on mom, I slammed the door, and I cried for a really long time, and mom only made me do 4 math problems. I'm going to do all of that again because it worked last time. So they're going to know. Your kiddos are smart. They know exactly how to kind of manipulate the system, and they're good at it. So, I mean, I have been outsmarted by like 1st graders before, and I'm like, oh, wow, they definitely pulled one over on me. So it's really important to stick with that original expectation and never change it, and never reinforce for anything but that original expectation. And then, like I say, throw a party when they have complied, even if it is the tiniest thing, like they had 1 sock on their floor of their bedroom and you asked them for 4 hours to pick up that sock. You want to pull your own hair out. You probably want to scream at your own kid at that point, and you probably just want to have a little bit of your own escape maintain behaviors. But I really urge you and challenge you to celebrate it, even if you are frustrated. And I've been there where you are like, oh my gosh, I just asked them to do the smallest thing for the longest time. It was not that difficult, but it is still a huge success, because after you get that first win, all of your other wins after that are going to come a lot easier. So I really challenge you to celebrate those little wins every single time. Okay, so next is how we teach those replacement behaviors for the escape. So we've talked about how we should not respond. We've talked about how we prevent those escape maintain behaviors. We've talked about how we should respond. Now we don't just leave it there. We want to replace all of those maladaptive behaviors with appropriate ones, because all behaviors are a form of communication. So this is where we can replace them with appropriate behaviors, because they're not going to have to only listen to mom and dad or one teacher forever. So we want to give them those skills that they can take to different people in different settings for the rest of their lives. So they're still accessing that same function, but in an appropriate way. So teaching appropriate alternative replacement behavior. So modeling the communication for your child. If your child has a talking device, if they are verbal, if they use a PECS book, modeling those modes of communication for them. If they have an AAC device, go on their tablet and show them how to press the buttons to communicate their needs. I need a break. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. Those sorts of things. Model it vocally for them. A lot of the times I'll say, you can say, and then I insert the phrase. And then when they say it, I say, oh my gosh, great job using your words. You can absolutely have a break now. So we're teaching them that their communication gets them access to everything. And if you're finding yourself like maybe struggling with full sentences, get creative. You can break it down into single words, and then you can kind of build up from there. So if you have a kiddo who's maybe limited in their verbal skills or their communication skills as a whole, just start with one thing, like all done, break, more time, those really short phrases for them. If you have a kiddo who's maybe more advanced in their language, you can definitely create a whole sentence for them. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. Can I have help? Those sorts of things, just modeling all of that communication, and then providing a lot of reinforcement. I know this sounds very simple, and like it's really nothing fancy, and it's not. ABA isn't fancy. It's really, really basic stuff. But the more that you promote these replacement behaviors, you're creating independence for them to use them on their own. So in the beginning, they're going to be pretty prompt dependent on it. So they're going to need a lot of help from you guys to be able to have these tools. But the more that you prompt them and the more that you only accept and reinforce when they communicate in this way, they're like, oh, that was awesome. Mom gave me a snack when I said I want a snack, instead of slapping her across the face. So they're going to be like, that was way better. Mom threw me a huge party when I used my words. I'm going to do it again next time. Again, as long as you're responding consistently and giving it that time to work in the beginning, you're going to see some more progress in the end. Okay, so Chrissy, is it okay if I kind of open up questions about this section, because then we'll go into the next function of behavior. Oh, you're muted.
So, if anybody wants to ask a particular question, I will remind you that we have the recording on if you want to save your question for the end, or as I said earlier, if you want to throw something in the chat. But if anybody has any questions about escape behaviors, go ahead and unmute yourself or send me a message through the chat.
Yeah, and then if nobody has anything right now, I can just keep going. Totally up to you guys.
Yeah,
I was just gonna add something. I think
Mhm.
a lot of our kiddos either know a little bit of sign language or have trouble expressing things verbally. So
Okay.
isn't this all done in
Mhm.
sign language? So I feel like that's a good thing for parents.
Absolutely. And this is break in sign language.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Let's see, we did all done. Break, more time. You could always accept like more. And then this is time. So you could teach them to do that. You could also, we talked about those visuals, so we could also make a visual board of 3 choices, the more time, all done, or break. And if your student or your child has the ability to point to things to communicate, they can just point to that choice board. So there's a lot of different options. And if, I didn't talk about maybe the mode of communication that your child or your student has, and you want to talk about it more at the end, I can give you some suggestions for that as well.
I will say, Mel talked a little bit about visual schedules. I can send out, we did a visual schedule workshop, maybe at the later part of last year, but we did record it. So I can send that out to everybody as well. I'm a huge fan of visual schedules. I think they are definitely can help promote good behavior and kind of take the parent out of always correcting, because the expectations are down on some kind of schedule. Anything from pictures and words to a list, or we even got to like a checklist in a notebook at some point in time. So but we do have a great presentation on visual schedules if that's something that you want to learn more about, or try that with your student or your child with Down syndrome. But we have had a lot of great success personally with visual schedules, and I pull them out from time to time when I feel like things just kind of need to get back on the right track, and we'll update what's on the schedule. It's just really, I think it's a lot about not knowing what's coming next. Sometimes I feel like, at least for my daughter, like her life might feel a little bit like pinball, like, what am I going next? What am I doing? No, I'm doing this now. I don't want to do this next. And that resistance, but knowing what's coming next, what's in her schedule, what she has to do for the day, definitely seems to reduce some of that, because I feel like she has a little more understanding about what's going to be happening in her day. So
Yeah,
I could definitely send that out, that recording out.
and that would be one of those antecedent strategies. So that would be something that you would present before the behavior occurs.
Yeah, and I'll throw one more thing out for when you are picking your reward, because this is easy to do. If you're going to pick the iPad, which, a lot of our folks kind of love their visuals and their iPads and their videos, be prepared that you're not going to give it to them when you need to make phone calls or do laundry or whatever other kind of thing. So when you're making your choice on that reward, it's something that you can always have control over, not just sometimes, because they will pick up on that, and if they get it later, oh, mom's not going to let me have it now, but oh, when she gets on the phone, she's going to hand me the iPad as an example. So just when you choose whatever that reward is that something that you can really stick with. And the iPad is one of those things that definitely can come in is helpful when you are, trying to get things done or whatever you're trying to do. So just be aware of what you choose as the reward.
I could add to that, Christy. Since I have a twin brother with Down syndrome, growing up as a registered behavior technician, I like kind of test things, which sounds bad, but it wasn't bad. Lots of our friends with Down syndrome like to really look forward to a certain event. So maybe like this weekend you're going to see a movie or something. So even I think reminding them of like what the goal is, even if it's like not directly like reinforcing after the event, it's like first we do our chores because we want to go to the movie this weekend. I think I've known that to help. I don't know if you've ever done that in your own implementation, Mel, but
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that works.
Yeah, and that can be more of like a delayed reinforcement. So that can be something that can be really helpful for this is like, since it's a more of a long-term goal, you can pair that with like a weekly checklist or token board. So maybe I've done this with some of my adult clients who have had a job and have like different levels of their reward system based off of like the behaviors that they've exhibited throughout the week. And there's, you could have, okay, these are my rules. I have to do all of my chores. I have to keep my room clean. And I help mom cook dinner one night a week, or, whatever it is within your home. And each night that they've completed those tasks or expectations or chores, and they've successfully done all of it, you add that token at the end of Monday, and then you add that token at the end of Wednesday. And then by Friday, you can go through it and say, okay, Sally, like you followed your expectations every single night this week. Great job. What did you work for? I worked to go to the movies, or I worked to go get ice cream, or go pick out a new pair of shoes at Target, those sorts of things. Those are great systems of reinforcement. And that's something that we could also talk about at the end too, about like your specific child or student that would work well, because we want to make sure that the reinforcement system that you have them on is motivating and is individualized to them. I work, in my current caseload, I have kids who work for all types of different things. I have some kids who work for tickles and spins, and then I have some kids who work for music and slime, and I would never expect them to be motivated by the same thing. So it's really important, and you guys know your children the best. So if it's something that you really, really want to have them work towards, make it really worth their while. And then I can always help with those visuals of what would work well for your kiddos.
I also noticed when Olivia was younger, and she had a behavior plan during part of grade school, is that some of the things that surprised me, and I sort of see this with people with Down syndrome, is she primarily picked a social goal. So one of her things that she could do was she got to go visit the nurse. Another thing was she got to play ball with a buddy. So she really enjoyed those social things. It didn't need to be something physical or candy or whatever. She was looking for, as our loved ones are very social, her reward was some social time with someone, either a peer or an adult. So it was just kind of thinking outside the box of things that surprised me that were very motivating.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a home client and she was in her 40s, and she would work towards having a date with her boyfriend that her guardians would set up for her. And it was very appropriate for her age, and it was very motivating for her. And, it's definitely, it was good to see that it can be all different kinds of rewards, going to the park with someone or looking at puppy pictures online. It can be literally anything that your kiddo is motivated by.
FaceTiming with grandma, or anything that can be kind of social. Just sort of maybe not the usual ones maybe I had used with my other kids. Hers definitely were pretty social.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so it looks like nobody really has any questions for right now, so I'm just gonna keep going through the next section. So this one, I'm sure everybody sees a lot of. It's attention seeking behaviors. So attention seeking behaviors is any behavior a child or adult exhibits in order to obtain attention from other people. So this could include acting out, climbing under the seat, yelling at others, making noises, etc. And I have another list of all the kinds of behaviors that we'll see. But this is a behavior every human engages in. All of the behaviors that I'm talking about in these next 2 weeks are just behaviors that everybody engages in. Maybe you have a crush on somebody you're really trying to get their attention. So you're texting them a lot, or you're going out of your way to see them. For kids, who's ever taken their kid to a swimming pool and they've done the same trick 18,000 times, just jumping into the water, and they're like, Mom, Dad, watch me, watch me. That's attention seeking behaviors. There's so many forms of all of these behaviors. So if you're ever unsure about a behavior, feel free to ask and kind of like what category it might fall into. So a lot of the ones that we see is like showing off. So maybe you have some guests over at your house, and they might be new people to your kiddo or your student. Maybe you have a substitute teacher in the classroom, and your kids are like, this is my time to shine, and they are going to be a little extra silly, or might engage in running away a little bit more, or speaking out, or singing, just being a little bit more over the top, or yelling at others. Property destruction. Sometimes I've worked with kids who will like break pencils and make straight eye contact with me because they want me to say something that they broke their pencil, or self-injury, or dropping to the floor. This is just a few. Like I said, there's a ton that can count as attention-seeking behaviors. And this function is going to be set up very similar, the same way that I talked about escape maintain behaviors. So how we often react. And I have to tell you, attention-seeking behaviors are probably the hardest ones to deal with sometimes, because we're human and we're dealing with it. And sometimes things make us mad, and sometimes things make us laugh. And sometimes it's okay if you have your own breaking point and you just can't really deal with it anymore. I totally understand that. There's a huge grace period, for all of this to go into effect. Sometimes we're giving them eye contact. Sometimes we're talking to the child. Sometimes we're trying to soothe them. Reprimanding is huge. Negotiating is huge. Trying to make them laugh. I've really trained a lot of adults who work with kids that I've worked with. They say, oh, I'm just trying to get them to forget about the behavior, so I'm going to make them laugh. And I'm like cringing when they say that, because I'm like, oh, please don't do that. Removing them from a situation. So maybe they're acting out at the park because they're trying to interact with a peer, but maybe they don't know exactly how to interact, but they still want their attention. And maybe they're yelling, or maybe they're throwing themselves on the ground, and you're just like, okay, it's just time to go home, and you remove them from the park. Another big one, and this is really tricky. This is tricky in the home and in the school setting, and it's talking to others about the behaviors in front of that child or that person. Especially if you're in a school setting and maybe you're an RBT or you're a para, and you're switching between staff, and you're kind of giving that staff an update on maybe how that kid's morning went, but you're telling them like, we really struggled in PE today. Or if you're at home, and you stay home with your kiddo, and your husband comes home, or your wife comes home, or their sibling comes home, and they say, how was your day? And you're telling them like, oh, well, Sally threw her lunch at me, and then, she did X, Y, and Z. And then you're talking about the behaviors in front of them. Now we've just provided all this attention to all those behaviors that we just told our spouse about, or their sibling about. Negotiating is big. There's a huge difference between reinforcement and negotiation. So reinforcement happens when you establish it before a behavior occurs, and negotiating is something that you offer. It's bribery, something that you've given them after a behavior occurs to get the behavior to stop. So it's really important to know the difference. Trying to make them laugh is Of course, because you're mom and you're trying to do the laundry and you're trying to cook dinner and you're trying to maybe get bedtime rolling, or you have to go pick up, someone from an activity or X, Y, and Z. And you're like, I don't have time for this. I'm just going to try and make them laugh and forget about it. That's really important. Like I said earlier in the presentation, if you're going to start responding, remember to have to do it 100% the same way every single time. So those are how we often respond. And I probably missed a couple ways that we respond because, again, we're humans. So back it up, how we prevent these behaviors from occurring. And again, attention seeking is hard because there's so many different ways that they can do it. And there's only so much mom and dad can handle sometimes. So how we want to prevent these from happening. Give attention often when problem behavior is not occurring. So don't forget about your kiddo and giving them praise and giving them a high five, or just going up to them and telling them that you're proud of them when they're just sitting maybe on their phone or watching a show or sitting at the dinner table, or maybe they just walked over to the dinner table and they haven't sat down yet and nothing has started. Give them that attention, because they're going to see mom gave me attention when I came over to the dinner table. Dad came over and told me that he was proud of me when I was just calmly watching TV, or, Miss so-and-so told me she was proud of me for staying in my seat during math. They're going to remember those times that you gave them a lot of praise, and they're going to remember why you are praising them, because you're going to be very specific in your praise, and they're going to engage in that behavior more likely in the future. Because remember, we want those problem behaviors to go down because we're not going to respond. And then we want those appropriate replacement behaviors to increase because we are responding the certain ways that we're talking about today. And when I say give attention for anything and everything, I mean everything. If they take a drink of their water and maybe 45 minutes ago they threw their water at you, you're going to say, thank you for drinking out of your cup so nicely. Or if they put their backpack on the hook for the first time, or they put that sock in the laundry basket, reinforce everything. And sometimes you're going to feel silly. And sometimes you're going to get into a power struggle with yourself because you're human and you're going to feel a little bit frustrated with maybe you had to ask Sally 17 times to put that sock in the hamper, but you're going to challenge yourself and you're going to reward her. And Sally's going to remember why you rewarded her and praised her. And then tomorrow when there's another sock on the floor, she's going to be a lot more willing to put it in the hamper. Give the same type of attention the child is looking for. So if your child is coming up to you and they're hitting you because they want your attention, maybe they're seeking a little bit of physical interaction with you. Maybe they need a hug. Maybe they need some squeezes, or they want to sit on your lap. If they are being like silly or throwing their toys at you or being really loud and dramatic with their toys, they probably want you to play with them. So that would be a good time to get on the floor and maybe play trucks with them or build a puzzle with them. Or maybe you have your child is an adult and they're on Facebook and they want to show you a post that's on their Facebook, or a game that they're playing on their phone. Make sure you're meeting them where they're showing you they need to be met. Because if you're not, say, you have a kiddo who really wants to spend time with you, but you're like, hey, nice job cleaning up, your whatever, here's a piece of candy. Those did not connect. They want your attention and you gave them a tangible item. So really, you're not really reinforcing that appropriate behavior where they're wanting to be reinforced. So it's really important to be mindful of what kind of attention they're wanting from you. So the biggest one is teaching them how to appropriately ask for your attention. This is something I work on a lot. This is something I've worked on with younger kids, adults, and I teach my staff a lot on how to teach kiddos how to do this, because it sounds kind of silly. Like, you have to teach them to get your attention. Yeah, definitely. If you want them to call you mom or dad, use that functional communication and say, you can say, Mom, I want to X, Y, and Z. Using names is really important. Having them tap, maybe they're nonverbal and they can't vocally communicate with you. Having them tap on you. You can use a gestural prompt and you can show them that you can tap on their shoulder And then maybe kind of guide them to tap on your shoulder and be like, thank you so much for getting my attention. I'm so proud of you. You have to teach them that skill if they don't already have it. So remember, we can't expect them to do things that they don't have the skills for. We have to teach them. And then using behavior-specific praise when giving attention so they know exactly why they're getting reinforced. I've already kind of talked a lot about this, and I'm going to continue to talk about this over tonight and next week. Behavior-specific praise is like the holy grail of ABA. So if your student or your child does not know why they're being reinforced, why are they going to do it again? So if you go to your job and you did 17 things that day, but your boss just said, good job, you have no idea what you did well that day. You have no idea if that report that you did turned out well, or if that lesson you did, actually taught the kiddos or whatever it is. But if your boss came to you and said, hey, I really liked that lesson that you implemented about math, that was really great. Or that report you turned in, I really, really liked it. Or I loved that work that you did on X, Y, and Z. Being very specific. And again, this is going to be very out of your comfort zone because it's going to be new to you. When I was first in the ABA world, I felt really dumb all the time because of the words that I was using and the phrases I was using. But now it's second nature. So I love your walking feet. I love that you sat down in your chair. Thank you for looking at me. I love that you put your plate in the sink. Oh, great job putting that sock in the hamper. Switching up your praise. Don't just say good job all the time, because if you just say good job all the time, they're going to be like, this is so annoying. I don't want to hear good job for the 12th time today. Same with us. Maybe you did something really sweet for your significant other and they just said like, thank you. But that's not going to be as rewarding if they said, that was so sweet. I love that you brought me home flowers or you cooked me dinner. You're going to know like, oh, they really liked that I did that. I'm going to do that again later on. So we're the same way. We want to know exactly why we're being reinforced, and so do your kids. So it's really important to be specific. So in ABA, we always want to be specific, right? So our first then statements are short and specific. Our behavior specific praise is short and it's specific. Our expectations are really specific. We don't want to leave any room for interpretation so that your child doesn't know what you're asking of them, because that can just lead to some frustration. So next, my favorite part is how we should respond. And this is a really challenging behavior to break because it's going to take a lot of your patience. And I just want to preface that because I know that I have done the planned ignoring in behaviors for hours on end, and I feel like getting frustrated sometimes too. So remember, if you have maybe your spouse at home can help you, or a sibling, or if you're in the school setting, another teacher that can step in, it's okay to know where your kind of like boundary is for how much you can deal with, and knowing where your limits are, but making sure that expectation never changes. So ignoring the behavior. And this is maybe shocking to some of you, but if you look at your child or your student and you say, I'm not talking to you until you do X, Y, and Z, that is not ignoring the behavior. If you are talking to them, if you are looking at them, that is giving them attention. So when I say ignore, while everybody is maintaining their safety, because we never want to put a child or adult at a safety risk, you are a silent statue when you are ignoring behaviors. You aren't talking, you aren't looking at them. You might be peeking out of the corner of your eye so you know where they are and what they're getting into, because they're going to pull other tricks out of their hat to try and get mom and dad's attention, or, teacher's attention, or brother and sister. But during all of that, you're going to stay silent. Maybe you have a climber and they're like, oh, well, you're not going to pay attention to me. I'm going to get up off on this kitchen table. I'm going to jump around a little bit and really try and get mom and dad's attention. They're safe. They're okay up there. You can still maintain that silent statue. Some staff that I used to work with who had a hard time with this, and they would talk a lot to the the kids, every time they wanted to talk, I would replace their behavior. I'd say, go get a drink of water. So you can replace your own behavior. You can say like, oh gosh, I really want to tell them to get off this kitchen counter. I'm going to go maybe have an adult beverage while you are waiting them out, or you're going to get your water bottle, or put in a piece of gum, or have a snack with you. I do that a lot in behaviors. I'm like, okay, I really want to prompt this kid. I'm going to get a drink of my water. So when I mean ignoring, I mean, you are a silent statue that entire time until that expectation has been met. So you can use nonverbal cues, and my favorite is pointing. And I have definitely taught some kids that they don't like pointing, but they listen to the point after a while. So say your expectation for them is, again, that sock or that math homework or eating those 4 pieces of vegetables or whatever it may be. You're going to just start tapping or pointing. If they're hiding under the kitchen table and you want them to sit at the in their chair, you're going to tap on it or point to it. That is great as long as you are still that silent statue. So you can do both without providing a lot of attention. Use neutral facial expressions and body language. This is also really hard because maybe you had a long work day and you're coming home and you just don't want to deal with this behavior, but you have decided that you're going to take it on in full stride and you're going to do it at 100%. It is really hard sometimes to not roll your eyes or to not giggle sometimes at some behaviors that you see. I have laughed in my shirt, behind my clipboard. I've turned my head giggling all of the time. So my kids don't ever see that I'm just a neutral, silent statue. Because if they know, oh, that made mom giggle, or dad got really mad when I did that. Now they have so much room to engage in more behaviors to create more of a reaction from you, because that little facial smirk that you did reinforced all of that. And now they're going to keep going forever and ever. So really, really important to maintain those facial and body language. So when I say like a neutral body stance, like you're just standing, you're not going to have your arms crossed or like making it where you look frustrated with your body, because our kiddos really pick up on those things. Never argue. That is a lesson that I learned very hardly in my career. I worked with really tricky kids and they were master at arguing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just argued with this fourth grader for the last 45 minutes. And I just reinforced all of this behavior. So that is why the silent statue comes in to help, because now you don't get trapped in the arguing, because you could have some kiddos and they make all the greatest points in the entire world, and they have now negotiated with you. Now they don't have to eat broccoli for the rest of ever. They don't have to do their laundry, and now it's 9 o'clock at night and you haven't even begun to scratch the surface of meeting that expectation. So if you're a silent statue, you don't get yourself into arguments with your kiddos. Stating that first then statement again can be really beneficial. So I always suggest to do that in the beginning when you're kind of seeing those behaviors, so you can really remind them of where that reinforcement is. And you can be a silent statue and then providing that first then statement every like 3 to 5 minutes. So you're reminding them of that expectation, but also use your judgment. If you know that your child knows exactly what you're asking of them, you don't need to keep prompting them with that first then statement. But maybe it's a new activity or a new task that you're teaching them to do. Maybe they do need a little bit more of a reminder. So if it's something that they are well versed in and you know that they know what they need to be doing and they know their expectation, go ahead and don't do any verbal prompts. Use all of those nonverbal cues with like the pointing and the tapping. And then this kind of just piggybacks off of everything. Don't continue to talk to your child. Don't try to soothe them, or I know this is really hard. It's hard for me too. That isn't benefiting you. That conversation that you're going to try to have to work through that behavior is not going to change the behavior. So my rule of thumb, if it doesn't change the behavior, it's not working, so stop doing it. So those conversations are not benefiting you. They're elongating the entire process. And your child is now going to know, mom will get down and talk to me, or dad will get down and talk to me, or Miss Jones will get down and talk to me. And then I get all this attention and I love it. And then again, like I said, throw a party when they have complied, when they've tapped your shoulder or they said your name appropriately, and they're no longer engaging in any of those behaviors. Go up and hug them and kiss them and throw them a celebration and behaviorally specifically praise them for all of the things they did. I have some kids that I'm like, you used my name when you wanted me to come and hang out with you. You asked me for the glue with a calm, quiet voice. Your body was so safe. You were sitting at your chair. I just overload them with very specific praise. So then they know, okay, Miss Mel is going to come and hang out with me when I use her name, when I'm calm, when I'm safe. She's not going to come and hang out with me when I threw my chair at her, or when I was hiding under the table, or I was screaming for her from across the room. She's only going to come and hang out with me when I do these things. So those are the ways that I want you guys to react. It can be a lot. And the same with those escape, maintain behaviors. So if you see this list and you're like, gosh, that is a lot, I challenge you to just start with one. Start with one response strategy that you're going to work on at 100% effort and do it the same way every single time. And then when you get a little bit more comfortable with that, maybe you can add in another one and another one. I didn't start my career being able to do this list of 8 things in the same breath. It takes time to get comfortable with implementing it. And again, you're breaking all of your own behaviors that you've done for so many years. This is your child. You're their parent. You've responded the same way tens of thousands of times, and now you're also learning something new. So don't put too much on your plate while you're trying to respond differently, because then it's going to be more difficult for you, and it might be something that you're not able to maintain over time. So just try to pick one thing and stick with that and see how that goes. So next is teaching those replacement behaviors. And I always get a little too excited and ahead of myself, and I've kind of already talked about a lot of them. But replacement behaviors for attention. Again, it's modeling that communication. Again, ABA is nothing fancy. We are always going to talk about functional communication training. So sign language, your AAC device, your limited vocal skills, anything that your kiddo does, a visual, tapping, pointing, anything that is their form of communication, go with it. And a big one is providing those phrases. I've even had kids who can read, where I will say like phrases you can say, and it's like a visual, and they're like short sentences that they can use as replacement behaviors. Any type of communication when they're not engaged in a behavior is going to be huge, and you're going to reinforce that. So it can be anything with calling your name, watch me, I want to hang out with you. I have literally taught children to say, I want your attention, and that's okay. It's going to seem a little silly, but they're going to know exactly what they're asking for. Requesting is huge. Requesting specifics is huge. And then again, providing lots of reinforcement every time they engage in that appropriate behavior. So if they've come up to you and they tap you and they may say your name 5 times, dad, 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 you're going to say, hey, thanks for tapping me and using my name when you wanted my attention. What's up, buddy? Those sorts of things. So really, again, reinforcing only that appropriate behavior that they have exhibited. Say they came up to you and they smacked you and they yelled your name. You're not going to reinforce that. You're going to go in and you're going to prompt that, either that light tap on your shoulder or the phrase, you can say X, Y, and Z. So those are the replacement behaviors for attention seeking. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then we'll go over all the rest next week.